So, we are back, and I would like to ask everyone to join us. Bring your coffee, bring your snacks. We are recording this session either way if you are going to miss the few part. So, the next session is also going to be a long one with plenty of content. Securing the future. It's a panel discussion about cybersecurity, responsible gaming, AI and AML in the gambling industry. I don't know how I came up with this topic to put them all together, but I think it's going to be awesome. So, the panelists are Katarzyna, Chmara, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yeah, it's just, all right. She's manager, AML and regulatory compliance expert in the financial crime unit at PwC Poland, PricewaterhouseCoopers Poland. Then we have Paula Murphy, business development manager at Mindway AI. Bob Michniak, associate director, RG Check at the Responsible Gambling Council from Canada. Alexander Haberl, Regulatory Development Manager at GLI Europe, and Alex Antsyferov, hope I pronounced it correctly, CBO at Trueplay. Alright, so the big audience is there, but they are going to have the recording. So I will start by drawing the first question to Paula, because we start with AI. So, how do you see the role of AI in enhancing player protection without overshadowing human decision-making in the gaming industry?
Thank you. Thank you for the first question there, Zoltán. It's great to see we pulled a crowd, right?
They're just coming.
Somebody tell them to come in. So how do I see the role of AI without overshadowing,
the human decision-making in the gaming industry?
Okay, well, number one, I think that this is super important, and I think what we're trying to do with AI is not replace human decision-making. What we're trying to do is enable the people working within the industry to be more sort of effective when making those decisions and when doing their jobs. So I always view this as so for us, the game scanner, it does the heavy lifting, right? If you have potentially millions of customers that you need to be tracking on an ongoing basis, you need to make sure that you are interacting with the right players about the right things. And the whole idea of looking for a needle in a haystack springs to mind. With AI technology, you can do that, and you can track those players down to the absolute detail of the behaviour that you're seeing there in the spin level data. And you can then make sure that you're identifying the right people. You can make sure you're talking to them about the right things. You can make sure that you are talking to them early enough before it becomes an issue. We talked earlier quite a lot about, responsible gaming. Well, I think I said this last time when we were in Budapest, but for me, this is not about player prevention. It is about having a strategy that will enable you to retain your players longer. Player retention obviously came up earlier as well. If you're identifying those problems early on, and you're interacting with your customers in a way that they see themselves in those interactions, then hopefully you can bring them back to a sustainable level of play and keep them playing with you for longer in a way that is for fun, rather than it becoming problematic. So I personally believe that AI can revolutionise what we do in this space, and I know that in our little pre-panel chat we were just having here, there's going to be some interesting views shared over the next 45 minutes or so about the role of the regulator and about some of the initiatives that we see sort of coming under the guise of safer gambling. Well, actually, if you understand your player behaviour, sometimes some of those initiatives that may be viewed by some individuals as kind of moving the chairs around on the Titanic can take less importance, and we can actually set some real importance around understanding how we actually protect our players whilst also protecting our businesses as well.
All right, so it's all about the personalized gaming experience for everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
And in what ways can operators leverage on this technology to better understand the risk profiles of the players and like you said, to offer a more personalized gaming experience to keep them coming back and doing it for fun?
Yeah, absolutely. And joining up all elements of your operation, right? So people have been using AI technology for marketing initiatives for a very long time. that same spin level data can be used to identify behavioural patterns around bonus abuse. It can be used also for responsible gaming, it can be used also for AML. And it is also about then speaking to your players with one voice across your whole business and really, really understanding what's going on with those players so that you can make informed decisions rather than allowing the AI to take the decisions away from you. And if you have an AI system that is explainable and understandable and you know why it's flagging a certain player and you know what the reasons that player is being flagged for, then obviously your human decision making is going to be much, much better than if you're sort of sitting there looking around in the dark.
All right, so compliance culture, Kat. I want to touch base on this because compliance has been on the topics for everyone in the past few years. When we started in 2016, nobody cared about that. It was just about marketing and doing keynote presentations, but now it's all about compliance. So as the gaming industry matures, because it has, how do you see the shift towards viewing compliance as a core business component, which is impacting player trust and loyalty? And the second question, as the complementary question, would be that how can this evolving culture be further integrated to ensure both player protection and increased revenue are both fulfilled?
Thank you. So as you mentioned, the industry has changed over the years. Before, the compliance was just an additional part of the business. And today we have seen that many people talking about the regulation, about the market, are bringing compliance up. And I believe that it's a more integral part of the business, that touching upon all sorts of things, starting from obviously obtaining a license, into data protection, how we store data, about marketing, how we actually attract our customers. There's all sorts of marketing regulations out there, safer gambling, AML. So I think the compliance culture is sometimes underestimated. It's a big word out there. You go into your training and you talk about compliance culture, how important it is. And there has been operators in the past that seen the compliance culture as just the big bad wolf, that somebody who stops the fun in the business, stops the revenue. I had many conversations in the past because I was the MLRO and head of compliance in the UK before I moved back to Poland. So there were many conversations when I had to explain to people the importance of compliance. And those organizations who don't have the right compliance culture, unfortunately, have to face fines and other regulatory actions. But I truly believe that over the years, companies realized that it should be a core of the business, that it touches so many different areas, safe gambling, AML, as I mentioned, and it's becoming more the kind of inner DNA of the company. They realize that they need to drive the compliance within the business, and most importantly, because of all the competitors in the market, I'm talking more probably from the UK's perspective. Poland, as we've heard today, is a bit different when it comes to the licensing and the competitive market, especially in the online gaming sector. UK is more obviously open to other operators and giving the competitors, you will have so many different types of games. There are similar, obviously they will have different features, but you need to have a difference. You need to kind of attract customers, and being compliant is more trust builder now than ever been before. People want to make sure that the data is protected, that they have the right data governance. They want to be protected from gambling-related harms. Majority of the people just play a bit, and they, and Paula will probably talk more about it, that we don't have all problem gamblers, and gambling in general in the UK and other areas have a bad reputation of being the organization who wants to take money from poor people, but there is a majority of people who will just play a bit, enjoy it and go away. But they have a choice. If they have a choice, they will go with the operator who is trustworthy, who has the fair games, the right terms and conditions, that you're not trying to hide clauses or ambiguous terms that are designed to not pay you out when you have a winning, and that they actually care about you. So they want to, as Paula mentioned, safer gambling is about preserving the customer, making sure they stay for longer, that they don't burn out. We have cases of problem gamblers in the UK, of suicide, so companies do realise the social responsibility and the effect of their games have on the players. But having the right compliance culture, when you actually want to protect the customer, you want to make sure the proceeds of crime, so the AML, don't enter the economy. So I think there's so many different areas from compliance point that the gambling operators now changing and realizing that this is in the DNA, this is the basic, the compliance culture should be across the organization. And the most importantly, if there's a trust, there's revenue, because people will come back, they will stay. So even though compliance may seem as the expensive side of the business, which don't really bring revenue, maybe it doesn't bring directly the revenue to your business, but it makes your customer come back, stay, and long term, it does bring you the revenue, in my opinion at least.
All right, thank you. Well, adding to the AI and responsible gaming, I know you're the expert also on the panel about the RG and AI. How do you see the integration of AI in the iGaming and enhancing the identification and support of players, especially in terms of markers of harm and player profiles?
Yes, thank you. Building off of like what Paula said, we do a lot of work not only in iGaming but as well with land-based casinos. So in land-based casinos, traditionally that's relied on the employees to both kind of monitor the players, identify signs or red flags or whatever the term is used within their training, and to then sort of follow up, interact with those players, or to escalate that to more senior employees. Now in iGaming, we're able to utilize AI and sort of the increased perspective on the player behavior to not rely on the human eye to notice those things and follow up, which is imperfect, but all of that data and that visibility is there. So companies like Mindway or a lot of operators will develop their own internal markers within their systems that they look out for and train their customer service staff to then reach out to those players or take certain actions, which is fantastic, and we're seeing a lot of different approaches by different operators and different companies coming up with their own products to offer to operators as well. So smaller operators don't need to develop their own sort of AI or internal markers, but can actually sort of source those from best-in-class companies. Interesting thing is that now that can then be transferred back to the land-based environment as well, where we're increasingly seeing some jurisdictions that have experience with some of those technologies on the iGaming side, trying or trialing, piloting, what have you, in the land-based environment to see what can be applied there to better assist employees and players in that environment.
I would also like to ask you about the cultural differences in responsible gaming. And maybe you can point out how the human intervention is crucial in interpreting data to cater to the diverse player behaviors.
For sure. So sort of on the AI front, once a player is identified, it's still pretty crucial to then not have AI auto-generate a message to the player and kind of go back and forth, but to then have it transferred to customer service agent who can interpret what the player says and sort of respond accordingly, express empathy, direct them to the right resources, etc. What's really interesting, and this is going to vary by market, depending on what's available. This morning we heard, Poland is sports betting, and you've got the black market and the legal market. A lot of the iGaming work that we do, Ontario legalized its market 18 months ago, and sort of all verticals are offered: sports betting, esports, casino, live casino, and so not only kind of looking at traditional or generalized markers of harm for any kind of play behavior, but also then differentiating that for a sports bettor or a casino player, or even combinations of those, like someone who sports bets and plays slots. What are those markers unique to those types of players? And then you add in yet another layer depending on markets that have, you've got different demographics depending on a market. And so you've got cultural differences that express themselves in how or what players will bet on, or what types of games they'll play, or what their attitudes or maybe misconceptions around gaming and luck and other concepts such as that are. So needing to really drill down and differentiate your approach to players to be most effective. For instance, right now, what's going on at the Cricket World Cup, so knowing that, your Southeast Asian bettors, there's probably going to be a spike in deposits and betting behavior amongst certain player bases, and not necessarily treating that as a flag and it's something that needs to be followed up on, but anticipating that and, adjusting accordingly.
All right, thank you. Yeah, sure.
So chip in there, and just really to back up what Bob's saying there, is that actually markers are great, and we've been taking part in the European standardisation of the Markers of Harm project, but you have to look at the behaviour in a contextual way. Just having like a pure marker-based system is not going to give you intelligent enough information about what's going on. So for me, and for us at Mindway, the markers are kind of like the starting point, right? And then what we do is we train the algorithm to replicate human decision-making and expert human decision-making based around those markers, but also looking at the other elements of what we're seeing. So the way I always think about it is anything a human expert psychologist can understand, well, the algorithm can then be trained to understand that as well. So you basically end up with like an army of psychologists across your entire player database, but an army that doesn't sleep, right? And that is the really important thing.
Yeah, exactly. So Alex Haberl. Yes. So there's also a rapid evolution of the iGaming, and it's associated challenges like cybersecurity. How are the independent testing labs adapting to their competences and services, especially to in the realm of cybersecurity?
But that's actually an extreme, interesting and dynamic development. I'm now in the industry since more than 20 years. When I compare my first experience as a developer, I come from the software engineering side, with a lab. This was actually GLI for a regulated market. And at that time, we still were talking about gaming machines. Are built on technology as developed in the 70s, 80s, last century. With the first PC-based games, we were actually not compliant with the standards at that time. Yeah, it was actually the GLI who told us, as young developers, okay, you can't comply, you don't comply with the standards, with the technical standards. Where we replied, well, you guys don't comply with the future. Yeah. And this was actually James Mader contacted me and said, well, what the hell are you talking about? And I answered, okay, boomer. And we actually worked together and cooperated together, and this was actually the time also GLI had to react as an independent testing lab, more or less as the market leader at that time, especially for the US market, more or less a monopolist. And step-by-step developed standards to make server-based gaming, to make PC-based platforms are able to get used in the gaming industry. And the last 5 years, this was extremely challenging for this development was extremely challenging for the independent testing labs, because nowadays there is no testing lab anymore, or serious testing lab that hasn't a dedicated cybersecurity arm or is cooperating with cybersecurity companies. We need to know all our jobs we are representing here, or companies didn't exist in gaming, I would say, for 10 years. AML, of course, Katarzyna, that was always finance and monitoring and control involved in gambling. But for us, you have been far away from our recognition in the past. Yeah? Nowadays, even GLI has now an AML department established in the US, goes into cooperate with our AML companies already, especially in terms of cybersecurity, and we also need to constantly monitor new developments. A good example is Mindway. Of course, I know the Canadian and US land-based responsible gaming are associations or first companies or universities are, as I remember in Canada, was cooperating with the land-based casinos for Quebec, for example, and also the HCO to monitor the problematic of responsible gaming. It was actually Mindway, the first company, was approved by an independent testing lab, was actually GLI, so that we took the technical analytical basis out of this. And whether you have new technologies in the game, you have information and money, you have of course also cybercrime and responsible or security, cybersecurity in the game. Especially when we're talking about now artificial intelligence. 2 months ago, it was actually our head of legal who asked how will AI affect our business in the lab industry, and nobody could really answer the question. But now we recognize already AI is used for responsible gaming. AI might be used also for AML. AI will be used for gaming content. And AI definitely will be also used for cybercrime and for a new generation of malware.
Yeah, this leads to my next question actually for you, in regards to if you can provide some specific examples of how cybercrime has evolved in the past years, and especially in relation to handling the sensitive player data and financial information, because most probably AI has quicker access.
Well, that's also a funny and interesting development. As I started programming already due to my family background as a child, yeah, and in my teenager years, and then you had actually the internet starting. In the early days, the hacker was seen more or less as a romantic figure, like a Robin Hood, yeah, and we all know the movies, yeah. Then, of course, it was getting more interested for organized crime, but also states involved and stuff like that. And also the hacking tools are developed with the industry and technology. It is, you remember the panels we had 3-4 years ago about crypto, yeah. Now we're talking about ransomware to be paid by bitcoins if you want to get your data back, and there's no guarantee you get it back. Yeah, so cryptographic or crypto as technology immediately was also used for hacking attacks and for hacking tools and malware. On the other hand, I need to say this is actually not new to us as mankind in terms of technology. Yeah, we had the first planes or cars developed before we had rules for cars and traffic and security measures when we're talking about planes. How many planes have already crashed or had to crash before there were the first measures done and established. I think even so we also need to look in a positive way to such development, because it's now the first time in artificial intelligence where we have reached a stage where we think already up front or in front of the next development what risks could be linked to the technology. This can of course also for friends like you, and young developers, this is often seen as a barrier, of course, yeah, because you want to develop good things and good tools and modern tools, and also learning with new technology means you have to allow for an error culture, I always call it. We learn from errors, yeah, I don't think it's useful to exclude errors by default. You cannot exclude them by default, and you can also not learn them from them. And nevertheless, it was artificial intelligence will be bigger step in our development than we think. And even the CEO of DeepMind, this is the AI arm of Google, this is Demis Hassabis, a few days ago mentioned that AI will actually require an international regulator, as we know it for nuclear energy and even weapons. So it's the EA are taking care about this, or the IPCC. So this definitely will require a next step, and our cybersecurity now involves all of our industries.
All right, so the other Alex. So, given the state's role as the guardian of citizens' well-being, quote, in the realm of responsible gambling, how can the government further enhance transparency and fairness for all stakeholders and ensure that gambling remains both entertaining and safe?
Right. Let me start off with this. I just opened the stake.com website, registered there with the local Wi-Fi, make a deposit with my Eurocard, and I'm playing Sweet Manzana. This is it. I have been playing that for the last 15 minutes. Polish government doesn't really care, so they let me in, and I have successfully registered at stake.com. Then I made a deposit with my card in euro, and of course with the crypto. 2 deposits from my laptop. Now I'm playing, and so far I lost 32 euros for 15 minutes. This is a very fundamental and profound question. So, Polish government doesn't really care and know about this.
Not just the Polish government.
Yeah, nobody knows that. So, stake.com has successfully and peacefully accepted my deposits. Right, I just lost 32 euros. Nobody knows about that in terms of, and there are 2 questions. So the first question is, how would any kind of government would know that this is potentially an addiction or not? Because stake.com, I bet $100, does not report any data, because this is a Curacao license and they just let me in. This is it. And my next question is, how much money Polish government will make off of that 35 euros? No, I just was 2 euros more. From those 35 euros, bet another $100, 0, because they just don't really know. So, and this is what I would want to kick off with. My biggest concern here is that the government has to be a tech-savvy partner for any kind of online casino, not an evil, right? And not the authority that is trying to shame or blame. In the ideal best case scenario for me is stake.com, I don't know, the CEO or the founder, just open the website, apply within a few clicks and say, all right guys, we want to pay taxes over there, we want to accept money, like where your local currency, whatever, pay taxes in a fair and transparent way, just give us the admin panel where we can set up everything within 15 minutes and pay taxes directly. And what the government does, they say, wow, we will hire 150 employees, we'll create a law that of course wouldn't be translated in English, because why do we need translation, right? And you have to write us an email and text and send us these facts to our office if you want to start a conversation. And this won't work. And my question is, I just shared that the UKGC paid attention, £13 million for last year to its employees. So this is a operating business. I mean, like the business which, spend more than Bet365. This is an operating business. So my question is, if you spend another 10, 30, 15 million pounds per year, what's your return on investment? Because 30 million has been and paid off our pockets, taxpayers. So you pay taxes, they hire employees, they pay 30 million per year. And my question is, all right guys, I'm a taxpayer, I paid you, 20, 30, what's the UK tax rate? 30, 35?
Varies.
I mean, they average, let's say 25. Would it be fair? Let's say 25. So I pay 5% of taxes. They hire a bunch of folks saying, all right, this is a gambling whatever commission. They're supposed to earn us more money as a government. My question is, where is this state report? What's the ROI? What is the return on my 25% taxes investment? And this is something that is happening in Ukraine as well. So kindly to Victoria, what she said. Brief explanation what has been happening in Ukraine for the last 4 years. Russian operator 1xBet has been operating for 4 years, nobody cared. Then they publicly kicked them off, and they kicked very much the biggest player, Ukrainian player. They blamed that, they shamed that, saying, well, you are pro-Russian somehow, we kick you out from the game. You know what? Right now, Parimatch is operating illegally, and there is no Parimatch, there is a body bet. The same redesign. How do you think, do they pay taxes to Ukrainian government? No. Because why? This is the fundamental question. They publicly humiliated. They say, all right, we want to make money off of that, of these gambling licenses and stuff. And now the biggest player is, guess who? Right, Pinup. Russian casino, Russian shareholders, nobody cares. This is it. This is the game. Last week, 50 operators, 50 gambling companies have been searched and investigated by the local FBI. And one of my good friends, he's an operator, and says, well, why should I stay in Ukraine, operate in a fair, transparent, and legal way, and have my employees and to pay taxes here, and some guys just, shows up at my office, humiliate my people, my employees, and say, well, we have some questions, and another guy shows up and say, well, we can organize you some kind of protection, and that will cost you 50K. I mean, around 50K. This is a rough number. So I'm not as optimistic as Victoria, and I don't see the bright future having all those local FBI investigations. But what I think should be in place is that the government has to become a tech company. If you want to protect your customers, if you want to ban those websites, if you want to get the taxes in a very transparent way, you have to have the tech department, the IT department who understands how the payment processing works, how banning all these websites and mirrors works, how to get money off of that. So you're not just a bunch of assholes who are trying, to get the salary, going to conferences and saying how good you are in this compliance and bullshit, which is not even in English, right? This is how would I know how to operate? This is true. This is a fair way how things are right now. This is a status quo, and and nobody really cares. So my point is here: the government have no other choice rather than to become a tech company and make money off of that. This is it.
Like that will ever happen. So Paula, coming back to you for more positive things.
How do I follow that?
Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate between these innovative companies and legislators and regulators? How can the collaboration between all these entities be fostered to ensure that the potential of the current technologies is fully realized for player protection?
So I now feel like that's the biggest question ever, and I want to take it a little bit back to some of what Alex was saying there, and I think we have to examine the question of, are we saying that these organisations are allowing these things to happen and they are not really getting involved in understanding the tech of the piece and what can be achieved with the tech that is available to us today, because they are self-serving and they want to protect that huge salary bill and their own entities? Or are we saying that there is a lack of knowledge and understanding? Because I believe these are two very, very different things, right? And how we get people to collaborate, really, before we can even think about that, we need to think about what is the reality of what we're dealing here. If we're dealing with a lack of knowledge and education, it's much, much easier. We can educate. We need people to obviously then want to interact with us in the tech industry, want to understand our solutions, move away from a position that often sometimes can come up in that regulators and governments don't want to be seen to be endorsing one company over another. That's not what we're looking for. We want to collaborate. We want to show them what the technology can do. We want them to understand the possibilities. And that education can be quite easily achieved if what we're dealing with is a lack of understanding. If what we're dealing with is a self-serving machine, then that is a whole different kettle of fish, and I do not have the answer, but I think Alex might.
Alex will soon start a revolution, as I see, because he has this idea since Budapest. All right, so Kat, I'm coming back to you in regards to KYC, safer gambling and financial crime prevention. So with KYC extending beyond just identifying verification, how can companies effectively balance continuous monitoring, risk profiling and player safety? Additionally, can you maybe shed light on the interconnectedness of safer gaming measures and financial crime prevention, emphasizing the importance of the holistic approach of all this in one package?
Yeah, sure. So I think historically when we think about KYC, we think about AML. However, and probably about years ago, it all kind of started and finished with identifying a customer, verifying their identity. However, over the years, as we expand, as we work together from safer gambling, from AML point of view, it doesn't just end with verification. It's about screening, all the PEP and sanctions, but also risk assessment, not just based for the AML, looking at the risk factor, but also from safer gambling. I think what Paula said to me last night, is about understanding your customer. Yeah. And I think that's the whole point. It's not about knowing the identity of your customer and just finishing there. It's about understanding your customer from a safer gambling point of view. What are the behavior, what are the risk factors, and from the AML point of view. And when I was in the UK, and I moved back 2 years ago, but the conversation about affordability checks, it's still there. And from my point of view, affordability checks are they kind of cross the border between safer gambling and AML. And you're kind of thinking, are we doing that for safer gambling or are we doing it for AML? However, more and more companies are kind of making more inquiries into not knowing only what your name, your address, date of birth is, but what you actually do for a living, what is the kind of out there, what information we know about you to understand how we can predict your behavior, or if what you do is what we expect from you from a safer gambling point of view or from AML. And the risk assessment from safer gambling from AML point of view is very important because that drives your ongoing monitoring and your triggers and the actions you take from safer gambling and from a anti-money laundering point of view. And so there's ongoing monitoring. And I think as the business grows, as the industry grows, especially the online business, as Paula mentioned as well, there's so much data within the online industry that it's very difficult for a human being to actually, I wouldn't say comprehend, but there's sometimes too much online data in online sectors. You can't find the, what did you call, needle in a haystack? Thank you. So actually, from my point of view, is that knowledge and using technology moving forward to kind of conduct the risk assessment, monitoring players' behavior is very important. When it comes to AML, again, talking about how they are linked together, what I find a lot when I talk about AML, now I moved to PwC, I'm more working with financial institutions, which are kind of the way ahead probably, the gaming industry now, but they are very much focused on the primary stages of AML when you're talking on placement, layering, and integration. And within the gaming industry, what I found as the MLRO, you don't really tend to see the kind of standard stages. You're more focusing on the proceeds of crime entering the gambling industry. And what I found is the linkage with safer gambling. And if you don't have the right safer gambling processes, initiatives, you may have customers who, because of the gambling addiction, are actually committing crimes to fund the gambling. So the gambling can be actually the vehicle for money laundering in one way or committing crimes. So that's what I always found, the connection and the collaboration between your safer gambling, AML procedures, policies, technology to work together, because you may start with safer gambling issue or a flag that turns into the AML, or you may start with AML that turns into the safer gambling. So KYC, even though it's primary AML kind of thing, I think it definitely can be used to understand the behavior you expect from a safer gambling point of view and actually protect the customers and keep the customers for longer, because you don't really want them to burn out and, God forbid, commit crimes or do something to themselves because of lack of action potentially.
Right, so, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Just picking up there on what Kat was saying as well, is that the other thing that I think we need to consider in this whole piece is the role of technology in reducing friction. Going back to affordability, although we're not allowed to call it affordability anymore in the UK, it's now financial risk checks. Okay. But there's a whole host of friction, and you know this from when you were an operator. The drop-off rate when you're asking for that kind of information from clients or from players is somewhere in the region of 80%. So in terms of the hurt that can do to your business, in terms of the fact that those players are just going to go next door and gamble with another operator, and ultimately looking at the conversations we had earlier, potentially to the black market where the checks are not going to be in place, we have to think about how we solve these issues. And if we look back to when all the sort of ID verification was coming in, we had the same concerns then, and it became something that was normal and that everybody does within the industry, and we found ways to use technology to deal with this friction. It's exactly what needs to happen here and what is happening here. But if taking it back to the earlier question that you asked me, the people that are setting the legislation are not engaging with the people that are creating the tech, that's where we get a mismatch. And that's where we get regulation that, you know, it's really, really hard to deal with, and you have operators scratching their heads thinking, how on earth are we going to achieve this? And that's why it's so important that we join this whole piece up.
Right, so staying with Kat in AML and injecting the AI into this subject. So given the rapid growth and regulatory challenges in the online gambling sector, how do you envision striking the balance between AI-driven automation and essential human intervention in AML processes, and how can AI be harnessed to enhance efficiency without sidelining the human element? I keep saying this human thing.
I think I'm not going to say anything new than my colleague said about AI and safer gambling. It's very similar in my view. So we know the online sector is growing, has been growing. It's predicted to be about 150 billion by 2030. And online gaming is all about volume of transactions. So with AML comes transaction monitoring. There's so many different transactions going through the system. And the more transactions you've got, the more people you're going to need to actually review them. As my colleagues mentioned, there's a human error element, you know, decision making, and finding the resources to actually make the decision and train them. You know, AML resources, at least we found them quite difficult to find. You know, having the right people in the right places, making sure they're actually at work, they're not there 24/7, there is sickness, there's holiday. But the regulator expects you to have the protection 24/7. If you offer a 24/7 service, you need to have protection 24/7. And you know, you're not going to have people working at night all the time. So AI is the only way to kind of make sure you have accurate system, make sure you kind of have the speed that you need. You know, from my point of my time in the operator, the Gambling Commission expects you, in the UK at least, to have an instant reaction to somebody's behavior. So, you know, and human will have the delay because you have to look through the information, understand it. So AI can be a bit more faster in how you kind of analyze a huge amount of data that's in the online sector, which can be from online operator point of view not the greatest thing, because you have more data than the customer actually have, so you are expected to know more about the customer behavior than the customer itself know about them, and kind of use that data to help them. So from an AML point of view, again, it's analyzing the data, the speed that you need to do it, the lack of resources. So AI can evaluate the transaction monitoring, the information you've got about the player, to the point that potentially can write you the whole AML report. And again, it's not about removing the human element, but it's more preparing the report and eliminating the admin type of thing that the analyst has to do, which takes sometimes, probably 80% of the time, is looking at different systems, gathering the data, copying and paste exercise, and only 20% is the decision-making process. So through AI, you can actually speed up the process, take action when it's needed, and get the human to look at the facts and make a decision, rather than, again, waste time potentially 80% of the time gathering the information which AI can do within seconds.
And also automating some of that process, some of that intervention.
And and let me jump in here and pick it up from here. And I mean, as of now, a bunch of AI tech companies are all over the world in every country. So the government, you don't need to put it up for 3-4 years and hey, hello, just stop for a sec. We'll hire developers. We'll develop the AI AML theme. That will take another 2, 3, 4 years, and we'll start doing AML in 2027. No. This is a very simple thing. Just find a local developer like Mindway, Trueplay, whoever in your country, in Europe, in the US, whatever, and outsource those things. So they will provide you with an easy understanding admin panel for those email folks who will spend another 2 hours to understand the patterns, to see the graphs, and to find the fluctuations, to whatever, right? So you don't need to develop, but you have to have this collaboration with the developers and outsource something that you are not expert at. And this is where it should go. That wouldn't be a huge mistake just to hire and pretending that you are AI expert. I mean, you cannot translate your local docs to English. You're not expert, right? Just outsource thing. That would be beneficial for both parties, right? So now operators say, all right, this is the third party, we can trust them, there is no room for corruption. I mean, if we talk about smaller countries, the government can focus on their compliance and regulation things. The operators say, all right, this is a fair and transparent ecosystem where I can operate, and those guys, I mean, third parties are here, not to fuck up us, but to help us to operate and to be as safe as we can be.
And 100% of the third parties' research development effort is going into the specific job at hand of what we're looking to solve. Where you're never going to achieve that when you fight it for resource in a much sort of bigger organisation whose main goal is something very, very different. Which again, I think is why it's so important. And I also think that's where the labs come in and the likes of Alex come in, right? Because we need to be transparent as well. So it's super important that you guys are looking at the work we do and validating that as well.
Bob, I want to also ask you about how does responsible gambling fit in the broader compliance framework, especially when you have AI, cybersecurity, and AML, and let me insert another big thing into this topic. How does this compare to its role in the context of ESG?
Yes, thanks. First, I'm going to comment on this sort of conversation or debate that's happening, and sort of say that it kind of just lends itself back to having a regulated market. Part of the reason Ontario, it had, I guess, what we would call, or what we were calling, a gray market. The government knew it couldn't do anything to stop the black market, so it just didn't attempt to do anything. Our gaming regulations were so outdated that they didn't even mention the internet existing. They were written in the 60s, so the government knew it would never be able to penalize or do anything. So eventually it was, let's bring it in-house, regulate it, then we can have stronger things around responsible gambling, AML, all those sort of compliance things, and greater integrity for the players, along with the tax revenue that comes with it. That's the biggest argument. That being said, we're talking about a number of individual operators and all the things that they can do with their players from an AML, RG, etc. perspective. But it's also important to kind of realize that players move around. If a player self-excludes on one site, they can go to another. If they set a limit on one site, they can go to another. I think AI really has the potential to bring some of those things together and facilitate the data, the privacy issues, to allow for limit setting or tools that kind of cross across operators, so that the operators in a competitive market are actually competing on product and experience and the entertainment value to the players. That being said, to the other side of your question about sort of that linkage back to ESG, we're talking here about compliance, RG is very much embedded within that with compliance, privacy, AML. But then you see some operators sort of taking it a little bit further and maybe not just meeting the requisite compliance thresholds in a given market, but kind of taking it further, sort of I think of Kindred's sort of journey to net zero for revenue from problematic players, and operators who will put in thresholds that are higher than what the regulator requires as part of sort of a value proposition to their players. We see this maybe a little bit more in sort of North America, where we have a number of fractured markets. You know, the US, every state has taken a different approach with different regulations. In Canada, we've got sort of different ones as well. And so sometimes it's almost, from the operator's perspective, easier to do that, to just have one common approach rather than trying to keep up with what's the nuance or what are the differences across the different jurisdictions that they operate in.
All right, thank you. So we almost ran out of time again. So my last question in this panel is for Alex. GLI Alex. as the gaming industry increasingly digitalizes, moving to online, how do you envision the future of land-based gaming in the terms of its exposure to cyber threats and the integration of online technologies?
Okay, that's actually already on the horizon, if not realized already, this sports betting segment. First, we clearly see a merge of online and land-based. Land-based is not safe or in a safe harbor when we're talking about cybersecurity. We had 2-3 weeks ago 2 big casinos in Las Vegas hacked. We have loyalty programs. We have player tracking systems are included. Regulators even ask for biometric access control. So this is already data available, data around, and data rules to hack. We see cloud services already are used for land-based casinos, and in the future we will definitely see only SIM clients in the casinos that actually operated over an online platform. But to come back to the UKGC and to the challenge of regulators is actually we also I'm not here to defend regulators, yeah, but I cannot really see the UKGC as I need a return of investment. This is I also don't ask for more crime so that I see the police is is something worse for, yeah. But I clearly understand your point, yeah, and this is I think we all need cooperative regulators. The regulators are also challenged today. Just want to pick out one example, Germany and Ukraine, for example. Yeah, Germany, and they don't want to now join this interstate treaty are bashing. Yeah, but the good thing about the interstate treaty is, yeah, it is like a wish list to Santa Claus. Yeah, so written by politicians, but you have everything in this package. Yeah, from AML to responsible gaming, artificial intelligence is covered, or even a little bit the labs play a role when we're talking about the RNG. Yeah, but in the end, the new regulator GGL is somehow teaseless. Yeah, when it comes to execution, when it comes to definitions of standards and stuff like that. Whilst for the Ukraine, for example, they're in the middle of a terrible war. You actually think they probably have other problems than COVID or gambling. Yeah, but definitely also now gambling is a problem because of our AML issues. And it was actually the Ukraine regulator that reached out to Gaming Lab and GLI and asking for consultation. Yeah, so it's I think often a platform that is missing between regulator and industry, where we as IPLs try to act as an interface, or if not sometimes mediator. Yeah, And we also try to define new standards for the new technology that can also be used by the regulator. And as a recent thing, we also even offer trainings, technical trainings to regulators to make them aware of new challenges, new technologies. And then it's something we all need to work together as society and industry to develop new standards. Yeah, so.
Yeah, just one quick one.
Yeah, just the last question. So why, imagine I want to open an online casino. So my question to all of us, and you especially, why would I choose the path of going to regulated market? I just buy the Curacao license, 30K. I just open the SoftSwiss, whatever white label platform, start accepting crypto and miscode it with fiat currency, and this is it. Quick way, like a few months, and I'm in the game of the online casino. So my question is, why would I choose this complicated path where I'll be bumping into a lot of compliance, RNG, whatever issues, if there is a crystal clear, no impediments, just jump in and take my money?
I would say because you want to have clients, a good regulated market actually make it possible to channelize the players to legal content, to legal operators. Let's compare it a little bit with alcohol. Of course, everybody of us could make illegal alcohol and sell it over the road cheaper than in the shops. But would we also reach the trustment and confidence of our clients who drink alcohol? Yeah, most of them are probably would react skeptic, yeah, and we see it also in countries where you have also touristic areas, Turkey for example, that have every year problems with punched and illegal alcohol, or even young people die of. Yes, because the taxes are so high, or the illegal alcohol is so expensive, and of course young people don't have that much money. Yeah, so I think a good regulated market finds the balance and has this takes time to mature. Yeah, but then I think the majority of the players will not look for the illegal possibilities.
All right, fair.
Can I just chip in another just thought there on that as well? My experience with the operators that we work with. It's not always about what can you do and having to fight through the sort of regulatory red tape. It sort of also comes back to when I go home at night and I sit in with my family and I talk to them, do I feel good about what I've been doing today? Am I happy with the ethics of my business and what I'm doing? And my experience with certainly the operators that work with us is that they want to achieve best practice, not just because of the regulator telling them they have to, but also because it is the right thing to do as well. So I think, yes, human beings do operate on a level where that is the path of least resistance. You're going to be in there, you're going to be making money, and you're going to be operational. I don't know, maybe I'm idealistic, but I like to think we also operate on a level where we have sort of a duty of care towards one another as well.
Like I have towards you, because it's lunchtime. So thank you once again for this great session, and you can continue the conversation during lunch and even at the networking party tonight. So we will have a break until 2 o'clock. Lunch is served outside and we will be back afterwards.
On stage.